crystalline towers of Valoria Prime caught the light of 3 suns and scattered it across the sky in dancing patterns of blue and gold. Ambassador Threshala stood at the observation deck of the High Council chamber, watching those familiar lights and wondering if she would ever see them again. Behind her, the council argued in their usual way. Their minds touched through the telepathic network that connected all Valorians, sharing thoughts faster than words could ever travel. But today the network carried only fear. The Devourer swarm has taken the outer colonies, Council Leader Morith announced, his crystalline form dimming with stress. 17 worlds in the past month. They consume everything. Our weapons cannot stop them. Threshala had seen the reports. The swarm was like nothing the galaxy had encountered in recorded history. They were not conquerors who wanted territory. They were not raiders who wanted resources. They simply consumed. Worlds, ships, entire civilizations, all became fuel for their endless hunger. Our shields are useless, another council member said. They adapt to our energy frequencies within hours. Our plasma cannons cannot penetrate their bioarmor. We have the most advanced technology in this sector, and we are losing. The Valorians had always been proud of their achievements. They had mastered faster than light travel 3,000 years ago. Their cities floated above worlds powered by controlled quantum reactions. Their medicine could extend life for centuries. Their philosophy embraced peace and understanding above all else. None of it mattered against the swarm. The military reports we have perhaps 6 months before they reach our core worlds. Morith continued. Perhaps less. They are accelerating. Threshala turned from the window. Her role as ambassador had taken her to many worlds, met many species. She had negotiated treaties with the logical Kresh and trade agreements with the artistic Pholons. She understood how different minds worked. We must send a distress call, she said aloud, knowing the others would hear her thoughts more clearly than her voice. To all known species. To anyone who will listen. We have already tried, Morith said. The Kresh say they cannot help. They fear drawing the swarm's attention. The Pholons are too far away. The Zenith Collective has closed its borders completely. Then we send it further, Threshala insisted. We broadcast on all frequencies to all corners of known space. Someone must answer. The council debated for hours, their thoughts flowing through the network in complex patterns of logic and emotion. Finally, they agreed. What choice did they have? Death was coming, and pride meant nothing to the dead. The message was crafted carefully. It contained their location, their situation, and a simple plea. We are dying. We need help. Please, if anyone can hear this, we are dying. The broadcast went out through their most powerful FTL communications array, pushing the signal as far into space as their technology allowed. It carried the desperation of an entire civilization facing extinction. For 3 days, they received nothing but silence. The swarm continued its advance. They lost 2 more colonies. Refugees flooded the inner worlds, their thoughts adding to the panic in the telepathic network. The military prepared for battles they knew they could not win. On the 4th day, a response came. It was not in any language the Valorians recognized. The signal used strange modulation patterns that their computers struggled to decode. When they finally translated it, the message was brief and oddly informal. We hear you. We're coming. Hold on. The council gathered again, examining the signal with growing confusion and hope. Who are they? Someone asked. The signature doesn't match any known species. Their technology is strange, the science director reported. The FTL signature suggests they fold space differently than we do. Their signal encryption is primitive but effective. Their language structure is unusual. Where are they coming from? Morith asked. A region we have never explored. The outer spiral arm, far from the established trade routes. We didn't know there was intelligent life there. Threshala studied the translated message again. Hold on, they had said. Such a simple phrase. But it carried something the Valorians had not felt in months. It carried determination. How long until they arrive? She asked. If our calculations are correct, based on their FTL signature, approximately 11 days. 11 days. The swarm would likely take another world by then. Maybe 2. But it was something. It was hope. The Valorians prepared as best they could. They fortified their defensive positions. They evacuated non-essential personnel from the border worlds. They tried to keep hope alive in a telepathic network heavy with dread. And they waited. Thrashala spent those 11 days reviewing everything they knew about the responding signal. It was frustratingly little, an unknown species from an unexplored region, using technology that seemed somehow both advanced and crude at the same time. What could they possibly offer that we cannot do ourselves? Morith wondered during one of their meetings. If our superior technology fails, what can these strangers accomplish? Thrashala had no answer, but she remembered the tone of that message. We're coming. Hold on. There was something in those words that the translation could not fully capture, something that sounded almost like confidence. On the 11th day, the unknown ships emerged from FTL space at the edge of Valorian territory. Their arrival sent shockwaves through every sensor array in the system. The Valorians saw the vessels and felt their hope waver. The ships were not elegant or symmetrical. They looked wrong, cobbled together from different technologies marked with strange symbols and colors. Some were massive, others were small and quick. None of them matched. This is Ambassador Thrashala of the Valorian Commonwealth, she broadcast. We received your response. We thank you for coming. Who are you? The response came quickly, and this time it was accompanied by visual data. A face appeared on the screen, a face that made every Valorian who saw it recoil in instinctive fear. 2 forward-facing eyes, a mouth with flat teeth and sharp canines, skin instead of crystal, hair growing from the head. It was the face of a predator. The creature smiled, showing those disturbing teeth, and spoke. We're humans, and we're here to help. The first human to step onto Valorian soil was named Captain Sarah Chen, and she terrified everyone who saw her. Thrashala watched the human woman walk down the ramp of her ship with movements that seemed too fluid, too purposeful. The captain's eyes scanned the landing platform constantly, never resting, always watching. Predator eyes, eyes that hunted. Thank you for responding to our call, Thrashala said, trying to keep her thoughts calm in the telepathic network. Around her, other Valorians struggled to hide their fear. We are grateful for any assistance you can provide. Captain Chen's lips curved into that expression they called a smile. Thrashala had learned it was meant to be friendly, but it showed teeth. Why would any civilized species show their teeth? We've dealt with hive mind swarms before, Chen said casually, as if discussing the weather rather than an extinction-level threat. Nothing quite like your devourers, but close enough. We'll figure it out. You have encountered similar threats? Morith asked, his crystalline form shifting colors with surprise. How did you survive? We adapted, Chen said simply. We always do. The humans came in greater numbers over the next hours. They moved with a coordination that baffled the Valorians. No telepathic network connected them, yet they worked together efficiently. They communicated with sounds and gestures, somehow understanding each other without sharing thoughts. Thrashala was assigned as the primary liaison. It was her job to help the humans understand Valorian strategy and integrate with their military forces. The first meeting with the human commanders was unlike anything she had experienced. So here's what we know, said Admiral Marcus Webb, a large human with gray hair and scars on his face. Scars. The humans kept their scars like trophies. Your swarm is a hive mind organism that consumes organic and inorganic matter for fuel. It adapts to energy weapons. It spreads through spores and direct physical contact. That about right? Yes, Thrashala confirmed. We have tried every weapon in our arsenal. Nothing stops them for long. They adapt too quickly. Good thing we don't rely on just one type of weapon, another human said. This one was younger, a colonel named James Rodriguez. You've been fighting them with energy weapons, right? Plasma, lasers, particle beams? Of course. They are the most effective. Not against something that adapts to energy signatures, Rodriguez interrupted. The Valorians flinched at the rudeness, but the humans seemed unaware. We'll use kinetics, explosives, some chemical options. Things that work on physics, not fancy technology. Thrashala shared a concerned thought with Morith through the network. These humans wanted to use primitive weapons against an advanced threat. We have battle plans prepared, Morith said aloud. Careful strategies that maximize our defensive positions while minimizing casualties. If you could review them, no time, Admiral Webb said, standing up. The swarm hit another colony 2 hours ago. We're going there now. You can come with us if you want to see how we work. The Valorians were stunned. The humans had been in their space for less than 6 hours. They had no detailed intelligence, no prepared strategies, no careful plans. And they wanted to rush directly into combat? That would be suicide, Trishala said. The colony is already lost. The swarm has complete control. Our projections show. Your projections assume the enemy behaves rationally, Captain Chen said, checking a weapon that looked disturbingly crude. But you're thinking like prey animals. No offense, she added, though Trishala wasn't sure what offense meant in this context. We are not prey animals, Morith said with as much dignity as he could maintain. We are a sophisticated civilization. Sure, Chen agreed. But you think about survival in terms of avoiding conflict. You use shields and long-range weapons. You evacuate when things get dangerous. That's smart, but it's also predictable. The swarm knows you'll run, so it doesn't expect a counterattack. Because a counterattack would be illogical, Trishala insisted. The casualties would be. We know, Rodriguez said quietly. His face showed something the Valorians were learning to recognize. Sadness. Determination. We always know the cost. We go anyway. The human fleet moved toward the fallen colony with a speed that alarmed the Valorians. They watched from safe observation platforms, expecting to witness the humans' destruction. Instead, they saw something that defied everything they understood about warfare. The human ships didn't maintain safe distances. They flew directly into the swarm's formations. When the devourer organisms tried to board the vessels, the humans let them. Actually let them onto their ships. What are they doing? Morith demanded. They're allowing themselves to be boarded. They'll be consumed. But on the monitors, they saw human soldiers fighting inside their own ships, fighting in close quarters with weapons that seemed impossibly primitive. Metal blades. Chemical projectiles. Even their bare hands. A Valorian military observer made a horrified sound. They're enjoying it. Look at their biosigns. Elevated heart rates, increased adrenaline, but they're not panicking. They're excited, it was true. The humans fought with an intensity that seemed almost joyful. They moved through the swarm organisms with practiced efficiency, calling out to each other, supporting one another, never showing fear. One human soldier got separated from his group, cut off by swarm creatures. The Valorians expected him to die. Instead, the soldier started laughing and fought harder. He pulled out increasingly larger weapons from somewhere on his equipment, each one more destructive than the last. Is he insane? Someone asked. Probably. Captain Chen's voice came over the communication channel. She sounded amused. Miller tends to get excited in combat. Don't worry, he's one of our best. The battle lasted 4 hours. When it ended, the humans had cleared the colony's primary structures and established a defensive perimeter. They had lost ships, and the casualty report showed dozens of dead or wounded. But they had won. They had actually won a direct engagement with the swarm. The Valorians didn't know whether to be relieved or terrified. Trishala met with Captain Chen after the battle. The human woman was covered in something dark that the translator identified as blood. Her own blood, from wounds that would have killed any Valorian. You're injured, Trishala said. You need medical attention immediately. I'm fine, Chen said, pressing something against the wound that made it stop bleeding. Flesh wound. I've had worse. Now let's talk about your defense grid. We need to make some changes. You fought while injured, Trishala said, unable to comprehend. You let yourself be hurt? Part of the job, Chen said with that frightening smile. You can't fight without getting hit sometimes. The trick is getting hit less than the other guy. That night, Trishala added an entry to her personal log. We called for help and something answered. I do not know if they are our salvation or something equally incomprehensible as the threat we face. The humans do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They challenge death itself with laughter in their voices. I do not understand them. I'm not certain I want to. The humans established their base on Threshold Station, a Valorian outpost that sat on the border between safe space and swarm-controlled territory. The Valorians had considered the station a temporary position, somewhere to evacuate from when the enemy advanced. The humans treated it like home. Trishala spent most of her time there now, trying to understand these strange beings who had come to save her people. Every day brought new confusions. She watched a human soldier named Private Jackson paint words on the side of his combat armor. The letters spelled something the translator called bad day insurance. When she asked what it meant, Jackson grinned. It means if the swarm is having a bad day, it's probably because they met me. The statement made no logical sense. Days did not have emotional qualities, and the swarm had no emotions to experience. But Jackson seemed very pleased with his joke. Later that day, she observed a team of human scientists working with captured swarm samples. The Valorians had tried to study the enemy too, but the organisms were too dangerous. They broke containment, they adapted to every security measure. They were simply too unpredictable. The human scientists kept them in simple glass containers. "Is that safe?" Threshala asked Dr. Lisa Park, who was currently poking a swarm organism with a metal rod. "Probably not," Park admitted cheerfully. "But we need to understand how they work. Can't kill something efficiently if you don't know its biology. But if it escapes, then Rodriguez's team will shoot it," Park said, nodding toward the armed soldiers stationed around the lab. "They're very good at shooting things. It's almost impressive how good they are at it." Threshala noticed something odd about the human research methods. They didn't just study the swarm structure. They poked it, exposed it to different chemicals, played loud sounds at it, even showed it various colors of light. It seemed random. "What are you trying to learn?" she asked. "Everything," Park said. "Does it react to sound? To electromagnetic fields? To different temperatures? Does it prefer certain materials? Can it sense vibrations? We're basically annoying it to death and taking notes. That seems inefficient." "It's how science works," Park said. "You try stuff and see what happens. We've already learned that these things really hate high-frequency sounds and anything acidic. That's two weaknesses we can exploit." Over the following weeks, Threshala began to understand something fundamental about humans. They didn't have one unified strategy. Every ship captain made their own decisions. Every soldier adapted to situations independently. It seemed like chaos, but somehow it worked. She brought this observation to Captain Chen during one of their planning sessions. "Your command structure makes no sense," Threshala said. "How can you coordinate without a shared consciousness? How do you know what others are thinking?" "We don't," Chen admitted. "That's kind of the point. If we're all independent, the enemy can't predict us. They can't cut off our command and control because every unit can operate alone if they need to." "But that's—" Threshala struggled for the word. "Inefficient. Maybe," Chen said. "But it's flexible. Watch this." The captain called her squad leaders together and gave them a scenario. The swarm attacks from the north in overwhelming numbers. "What do you do?" Every leader gave a different answer. Some suggested retreating to a secondary position. Others proposed flanking maneuvers. One particularly aggressive sergeant suggested charging directly at the enemy with explosives. "See?" Chen said. 5 different solutions. In an actual battle, they'd each do what makes sense for their position, their resources, and their assessment of the situation. No waiting for orders, no rigid plans that fall apart when circumstances change. Threshala shared her confusion through the telepathic network with other Valorian observers. They were all struggling with the same questions. How did humans survive with such disorganization? How did they achieve anything without consensus? The answer came during a conversation with Dr. Park. "You're from a collective consciousness species, right?" Park asked while examining some swarm DNA. "You share thoughts, make decisions together, all that?" "Yes, it allows for optimal efficiency and understanding." "Must be nice," Park said. "We don't have that. Every human is alone in their own head. We have to use words to share ideas, and words are imperfect. We misunderstand each other constantly." "That sounds terrible," Threshala said honestly. "It is sometimes," Park agreed. "But it also means we're individuals. Every human sees the world differently. We argue, we disagree, we come up with crazy ideas that no rational consensus would approve. And sometimes those crazy ideas save lives." She pointed to her research notes. "I've identified 14 potential weaknesses in the swarm's biology. 14 different ways we might hurt them. A collective mind would have chosen the optimal solution and focused on that. But I'm going to test all 14 because maybe the 10th best idea is actually perfect for a specific situation." Threshala was beginning to understand. The humans' weakness, their lack of unity, was also their strength. They were unpredictable because they themselves didn't know what they would do until they did it. That night, she attended what the humans called a mess hall gathering. Soldiers sat together eating food and talking. Threshala noticed something strange. A human named Corporal Williams was talking about his childhood, showing pictures of a small human child he called his daughter. "You keep images of offspring?" Threshala asked. "Of course," Williams said, his face showing the emotion called pride. "That's my little girl."
"She's 4.
back on Earth with her mom. And you came here? Away from her? To fight? So she doesn't have to, William said simply. So she can grow up safe. Around the table, other humans nodded. They all had families, homes, lives they left behind. They risked everything for people they would never meet. For a species not their own. I don't understand, Threshala admitted. Logically, you should protect your own families, your own world.
Why risk yourselves for us?
A sergeant named Torres answered. Because someone has to. Because we can. Because we've been where you are, facing extinction, feeling hopeless. Someone helped us once, other humans, but still. We learned that when you survive something terrible, you have two choices. You can hide and protect what you have, or you can use what you learned to help others survive too. We choose the second one, Williams added. Every time. Threshala felt something strange in that moment. The Valorians shared thoughts and emotions through their network. Perfect understanding through perfect connection. But these humans, isolated in their individual minds, somehow formed bonds just as strong. They called it friendship, loyalty, love. They chose to connect, and that choice made the connection powerful. Later, she updated her log. I am beginning to understand the humans, though understanding them is terrifying in its own way. They are not superior to us in technology or intelligence. They are survivors. They evolved on a world that tried to kill them constantly. And they learned to adapt, to persist, to never surrender. They lost members of their species to predators, diseases, disasters, and each other. But they kept going. And now they're here, teaching us their most important lesson. Survival is not about being the strongest or the smartest. It's about being too stubborn to give up. The swarm learned. That was the terrifying part. It adapted to the humans' kinetic weapons, grew thicker armor against their explosives, developed countermeasures to their chemical attacks. What worked last week became useless this week, but the humans learned faster. Threshala stood in the strategy room watching Admiral Webb present a plan that made her crystalline form dim with horror. On the holographic display, 3 human-controlled worlds glowed in amber. The swarm was advancing toward them in massive numbers. We'll evacuate the civilian populations here, here, and here, Webb said, pointing to the worlds. Then we'll leave military volunteers behind. A few thousand on each world. Leave them? Morith's voice was sharp with shock. You mean abandon them to die? No, Captain Chen said quietly. We mean let them fight. Rodriguez stepped forward, his face showing the expression humans made when they were determined. The swarm expects us to run from overwhelming force. That's what you've always done. It's learned that pattern. So we're going to do the opposite. We're going to make it think these worlds are defended by skeleton crews. Minimal resistance. It'll commit major forces to consume them quickly. And then? Threshala asked, though she was afraid of the answer. Then we spring the trap, Dr. Park said, bringing up new schematics. We've spent the last month studying the swarm's biology. We know it has a command structure, even if it's distributed. There's a central node, a core consciousness that coordinates the major movements. It stays hidden, protected by millions of drones. But if we give it a target it thinks is easy, it will expose itself. Threshala finished, understanding flooding through her with cold dread. But the soldiers you leave behind, the ones who volunteer, they will die. Probably, Webb admitted. We're not hiding that from them. Every volunteer knows this is a one-way mission. Then why would anyone volunteer? Morith demanded. It's illogical. It's suicide. It's necessary, a new voice said. Threshala turned to see Corporal Williams, the human who had shown her pictures of his daughter. He stood in the doorway with a group of other soldiers, all wearing their combat gear. We're the volunteers for Threshold World 3, Williams said. All 3,000 of us. We know what we're signing up for. But your daughter, Threshala said. You showed me her picture. You said you came here so she could be safe. That's right, Williams said. His eyes, those predator eyes, were calm. And this is how I keep her safe. If we don't stop the swarm here, it eventually reaches human space. Earth. Her. So I stop it here. We voted, another soldier added. Each garrison voted. We knew the risks. We accepted them. The Valorians couldn't comprehend it. Choosing to die? Volunteering for certain death? It violated every principle of logic and self-preservation, but the humans did it anyway. Over the next weeks, Threshala watched the preparations with a mix of admiration and horror. The humans fortified the 3 worlds, setting up what they called kill zones and choke points, They stockpiled weapons, ammunition, and what Dr. Park cheerfully referred to as unpleasant surprises. Threshala spent time with the volunteers trying to understand them. She found Sergeant Torres supervising the placement of explosives in a civilian shelter. "Why these locations?" she asked. "Because when we fall back, we'll lead the swarm through here," Torres explained. "They'll think they're chasing us into a shelter. Instead, they're walking into a bomb. You're using civilian structures as weapons." "Empty civilian structures," Torres corrected. "Everyone's evacuated. Now these buildings are just resources we can use. But after the battle, if you win, we won't," Torres said flatly. "We're not winning this battle. We're buying time and drawing out the enemy's command node so the main fleet can kill it. That's the mission. That's all that matters. How can you be so calm about your death?" Torres stopped working and looked at Threshala directly. "I'm not. I'm terrified. We all are. But being afraid doesn't mean you stop doing what needs to be done. It just means you're human." The trap was set. The swarm advanced as predicted, seeing 3 lightly defended worlds and committing massive resources to consume them quickly. The human volunteers dug in and prepared to make their stand. Threshala watched from the command ship as the battle began. The swarm hit the first world like a tsunami of flesh and hunger. The human defenders fought with everything they had, falling back through prepared positions, making the enemy pay for every meter of ground. But they were being overrun. Slowly, inevitably, the swarm was winning. On the communication channels, Threshala heard the human soldiers calling to each other, not panicking, not begging for rescue. They were joking, encouraging each other, even singing something they called a war song. "North sector falling back to position Delta," Williams reported. His voice was steady despite the sounds of battle behind him. "Swarm is taking the bait. They think they're winning." "Because they are winning," Moreth said quietly beside Threshala. "No," Captain Chen said from her position at the tactical station. "They're doing exactly what we need them to do. The command node is moving forward. It thinks the threat is minimal. It's exposing itself." On the displays, Threshala saw it, a massive structure appearing on the sensors, hidden within the swarm's forces until now. The central consciousness, the core that controlled billions of organisms. "All ships target confirmed." Admiral Webb's voice rang out across the fleet. "Execute Operation Spite." The human fleet, which had been waiting in stealth positions, dropped their camouflage and accelerated at impossible speeds. Not toward the planets being overrun, but toward the command node. On Threshold World 3, Williams and his garrison made their final stand. They fought in the ruins of cities, in tunnels, in burning buildings. They fought knowing no help was coming, knowing every minute they delayed the swarm was a minute the fleet needed. "It's been an honor," Torres said over the general channel, her voice showing pride even as her biosigns indicated critical injuries. "Give them hell for us." "Always," Admiral Webb replied. The fleet hit the swarm's command node with everything humanity had developed. Kinetic kill vehicles traveling at relativistic speeds. Nuclear weapons. Antimatter warheads. Chemical weapons designed specifically for the swarm's biology. And hundreds of boarding teams, human soldiers who flew directly into the structure to tear it apart from inside. The battle raged for 18 hours. The command node fought back with desperate ferocity, finally understanding the trap. But it was too late. The humans had committed to their assault with the same stubborn determination that defined their species. When the node finally collapsed, its death scream echoed through the swarm. Billions of organisms suddenly disconnected from their guiding intelligence. They didn't die immediately, but they lost coordination, lost purpose. They became vulnerable. On the 3 worlds, the few surviving volunteers reported the change. "Swarm's going crazy," Williams said. "They're attacking each other, moving randomly. Whatever you did, it worked." But there were so few voices left on the communication channels, so many had fallen silent. The human fleet returned to evacuate the survivors. Out of 9,000 volunteers across 3 worlds, fewer than 800 survived to be rescued. Threshala met Williams as he was carried to the medical bay. He was badly wounded, would require weeks of treatment even with advanced medical technology, but he was alive. "Your daughter," Threshala said. "You'll see her again." Williams smiled through his pain. "Tell her Daddy did good work today." That night, Threshala updated her log, her thoughts heavy with emotions she struggled to name. The humans won their battle today, but the cost was terrible. Over 8,000 dead to kill one command node. And yet they call it a victory. They mourn their dead but celebrate their sacrifice. I am learning that humans measure success differently than we do. They don't count cost versus benefit. They don't calculate acceptable losses. They simply ask, did we protect what we love? And if the answer is yes, then any price was worth paying. I am beginning to understand why the galaxy should be very grateful these creatures came to help us, and very afraid of what might happen if anyone ever threatened what they consider theirs. The swarm was dying, but it would not die easily. With its central node destroyed, the billions of organisms scattered across dozens of worlds had lost their coordinating intelligence. But they still consumed. They still fought. They were now like a body without a brain, operating on base instinct and terrible hunger. The final battle came 6 months after the humans arrived. Every swarm organism in Valorian space seemed to converge on one location, the remains of the original command node. Some instinct, some final programming drove them to protect or rebuild what they had lost. It's now or never, Admiral Webb said during the final planning session. We hit them with everything. We end this today, or we don't end it at all. Every human ship gathered for the assault. The Valorian fleet joined them, their elegant vessels flying alongside the patchwork human warships. Threshala was there too, aboard Captain Chen's flagship. She had asked to witness the end, whatever that end might be. The battle was unlike anything she had seen before. The swarm fought with mindless fury, throwing millions of organisms at the combined fleet. The humans met them with equal fury, but theirs was controlled, directed by strategy and supported by the will to survive. Threshala watched human boarding teams launch toward the largest swarm structures. These were suicide missions. Everyone knew it. But the humans went anyway, laughing and shouting challenges over their communication channels. Remember, Captain Chen said over the general frequency, we're not brave. We're just too stubborn to die quietly. A chorus of human voices responded with what they called a war cry. It was loud, aggressive, and it sent chills through every Valorian who heard it. The boarding action was chaos. Threshala watched through helmet cameras as human soldiers fought through organic corridors, burning and cutting and shooting their way toward the core. They moved through swarms of organisms that should have killed them. Some teams were wiped out. Others pushed forward over the bodies of their fallen. One team, led by Sergeant Torres, who had survived the previous battle with extensive cybernetic replacements, reached what their scanners identified as a secondary control center, a smaller node trying to restore the swarm's coordination. Found it, Torres reported. It's bigger than expected. Going to need more explosives than we brought. Fall back, Admiral Webb ordered. We'll hit it from orbit. Negative, Torres said calmly. By the time you get in position, it'll have re-established connection with the local swarm. We're doing this now. Torres, with respect, Admiral. I didn't survive 3 months of physical therapy and getting half my body rebuilt just to run away from an overgrown tumor. We're ending this. Torres out, the communication cut off. 30 seconds later, a series of explosions tore through the swarm structure. Torres's entire team, 23 humans, destroyed the secondary node and themselves in the process. The effect was immediate. Across the battlefield, swarm organisms began dying. Without any central intelligence, without even the basic coordination they needed, they simply stopped functioning. In less than an hour, the threat that had nearly destroyed an entire civilization was reduced to biological debris floating in space. The silence that followed was strange. After months of constant battle, of alarms and weapons fire and desperate communications, there was only quiet. Status report, Admiral Webb finally said. The reports came in slowly. Ship damage, casualties, assessment of the swarm's destruction. The numbers were sobering. The human fleet had lost 41% of its personnel, dead or wounded so badly they couldn't continue fighting. Over 15,000 humans had died in Valorian space, but the swarm was gone. The aftermath took months. The Valorians helped the humans recover, offering their advanced medical technology to heal the wounded and their resources to repair damaged ships. It was the least they could do. Threshala spent time with the survivors, still trying to understand them. She found Williams in a medical bay, mostly healed now, looking at images of his daughter on a small device. You're going home, she said. Eventually, Williams agreed. They're sending most of us back in waves. I'm in the third group. Should be home in about 2 months. Will you tell your daughter what you did here? Williams considered the question. Someday. When she's older. When she can understand why I left. For now, I'll just tell her I missed her and I'm sorry I was gone so long. You saved our entire civilization, Threshala said. Your species gave their lives for ours. How do we repay such a debt? You don't, Williams said simply. That's not how it works. You don't help people because you expect something back. You help because it's right, because you can, because someone has to. Then what do we do? Williams smiled. You survive. You rebuild. You live good lives and remember that you're not alone in this galaxy. And maybe someday if someone else sends out a distress call, you answer it. You pass it forward. In the weeks that followed, Threshala saw humanity's influence spreading through Valorian culture. Her people were learning to think independently, to make individual decisions, to question consensus. It was uncomfortable, even frightening for some. But it was also liberating. The Valorian military began restructuring, adopting some human tactics, not abandoning their technology or their telepathy, but learning to be flexible, to adapt, to think creatively. They would never fight exactly like humans, they were too different. But they could learn the lesson humanity taught. Survival sometimes requires doing the unthinkable. On the day the last human ships prepared to leave, a ceremony was held on Valoria Prime. The entire council attended, along with thousands of citizens whose crystalline forms glowed in the light of 3 suns. Admiral Webb stood before them, looking tired but satisfied. We came because you needed help. We stayed because the job wasn't done. Now it's done and it's time to go home. Morith stepped forward, his form shimmering with emotion. You saved us. Your species sacrificed thousands of lives for ours. We will never forget. Good, Webb said. Don't forget. But more importantly, remember what you learned. You're not just survivors now. You're people who know what survival costs. Use that knowledge. Teach it to others, Captain Chen added. The galaxy's bigger than most species realize. There are threats out there and civilizations that need help. We can't be everywhere. But you can answer calls too now. You can be what we were for you. Threshala approached as the ceremony ended. She had prepared a formal speech, proper words for such an occasion. But when she reached Chen, the words felt inadequate. We called for help, she said finally. And something incomprehensible answered. Something terrifying and beautiful and stubbornly, impossibly alive. Thank you. Chen smiled, and Threshala no longer found it frightening. She understood now that showing teeth could mean joy, could mean friendship, could mean a promise to fight beside you when darkness came. Thank you for letting us help, Chen said. Take care of yourselves. And if you ever need us again, you know how to call. The human ships departed over the following days, jumping to FTL and vanishing into the vast dark between stars. But their influence remained. In the way Valorian soldiers now trained. In the way their scientists approached problems. In the willingness to take risks, to sacrifice, to never surrender. Threshala made her final log entry about the humans that night. They came when we called. These impossible creatures from an impossible world. They taught us that survival is not about having the best weapons or the most advanced technology. It's about having the will to keep fighting when everything seems lost. It's about being willing to pay terrible prices for things that matter. It's about forming bonds strong enough to defy death itself. We are changed by knowing them. We are better for it. And we now understand our responsibility. The humans showed us that civilized beings don't hide from the darkness. They run toward it because someone has to. Because they can. Because it's right. If another civilization sends out a call for help, we will answer. We will say what the humans said to us. We hear you. We're coming. Hold on. Years later, in a distant part of the galaxy, a desperate message broadcast into the void. A young civilization facing extinction crying out for anyone who might help. 2 responses came. The first, in a language now known across many worlds. We're coming. Hold on. The humans always ready to answer. The second, in crystalline tones from telepathic minds. You are not alone. Help is coming. The Valorians paying forward what they had learned. And in the darkness between stars, hope traveled at the speed of light, carried by those who had learned the most important lesson of all. The galaxy is full of dangers, but it's also full of people willing to stand against them. Not because it's easy, not because it's safe, but because when someone calls for help, someone has to answer, and humanity taught the galaxy that someone always would.